That's me, not Sophia.
Cool.
All you.
Yeah, so hospitality, I mean, social media, like Jeff said, is moving super quickly. It's important for a lot of reasons. But the hospitality industry in general is, also moving, a lot of changes there. So how to kind of keep up with both of them is a balance and a pretty big thing. So the first half, I'll kind of go over just like some social media tactics in general, depending upon kind of like who's on here and what your role is in social media or marketing or just the business in general. Some of it might be familiar stuff you're already doing. Some of it may not be, but just some like social media basics, thinking specifically the hospitality industry in mind, and then kind of moving into a few things that, some of the newer stuff that's coming up and how to deal with it, specifically changes like, Jeff mentioned, or how to think about it when it comes to the hospitality industry in general. So let me move into it. So social media consideration. Is it safe to assume that everyone on here is on social in one capacity or another? Probably.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah,
so
I think so.
I think, there's the value of social media is, people have a lot of different understandings for what the value of social media is. I think a lot of us kind of just feel the pressure of, we just need to be on there. Like some of us may not understand fully why or, how powerful it can be, but it's where everyone else is. And it's, kind of where you need to be to show up and compete. I often refer to it as the modern day phone book, or the classified ads, where it's like, if you're not back there, where are you? And so some platforms more than others, but so when we think about social media and just like, investing in it or having a team, work on it, or just putting money into content, or even just like allocating time, which can be hard to do and is often kind of, lower on the totem pole of, value and objectives, content creation, who your audience is, and making a plan are all just like really good pillars to kind of consider, which I'll break down a little bit further. So importance of social media, as a lot of us know, is just like how it, allows us to engage with potential customers, but also current customers, figure out who they are, what they're into, how you can really talk to them and speak their language. A lot of that comes with a strong social media strategy and the ability to kind of create content that resonates with them or, sparks them in a way. And having a strategy and kind of understanding your audience and the industry that you're in helps you be a little bit more pointed or strategic when it comes to kind of who you're talking to. So, engaging traffic, driving traffic, helping to book new clients. And then the biggest thing is kind of these days for social media, especially organic versus paid, is just creating ongoing awareness. So, just having a page for someone to look you up if you're a hotel, and maybe they're seeing you online on the website and everything for more of the logistical part, but then heading over to Instagram for kind of just what's going on, what do the rooms look like for more of a detailed shot, who goes there, what are they posting, that sort of thing. So a lot of that kind of comes down to reputation management for the brand. So when we think of objectives kind of breaking down, these tend to be like the three biggest main objectives for folks. They, often will differ depending upon kind of what type of business you are, what industry you're in, kind of what your overall goals are. So those are really important to define. But usually it's a mix of these three. Sometimes it's a little bit more of one than the other. For example, driving traffic, especially if you're maybe like online retail, for example, or a hotel, looking for bookings. But the other two might always kind of also be in the background. So maintaining and growing the audience and, again, using it to connect with both old and new audience members. Raising brand awareness, thinking of it as just a PR tool to maintain reputation, show kind of, what's going on, things you can't really show on a website, or, maybe you show it on a newsletter, but this is a bit more frequent. And then of course, driving traffic, which a lot of times, especially these days, just with the power of the internet, can be the most important, is getting people over to the website. Of course, we want people walking into the door of our businesses, but a lot of times walking through the door starts with, heading to the website first. So those are kind of three of the big ones to consider. The next thing to consider is content creation. And when we think of content creation, it's kind of a broad topic, but there's a lot of different types of content to break it down to. There's photos, there's graphics, there's videos, there's link-based posts. And of course, different ones are different for different platforms. Posting links on Instagram, as a lot of us know, doesn't work. But for those who are still on, Twitter or Facebook, links are important, and that kind of gets you out of Facebook world and over to the website, which again is a great tactic for driving traffic. Videos, content creation for videos is so important these days for a couple of reasons that we can get into more so in a bit, but that's definitely like the biggest type of content and the most important type of content. Video has kind of taken over the internet. And if we were having this conversation, a year ago, it might be a little bit different. It was more kind of pictures were doing everything. Graphics are really great for sending out, a message or a flyer, especially in the hospitality industry when maybe there's, menus or events or things like that. That's when graphics can be a really great use, because people tend to look at the visual and maybe not always read the caption. So if we can use a graphic to kind of announce something and get their attention, rather than just assuming that they'll see a pretty picture and read the caption, then that's a great tactic there. When thinking about content creation, quality over quantity is also really important. A lot of folks just feel the urgency to, just post, which I think we all kind of feel the urgency to show up and the importance to show up. So it's kind of balancing like the importance of showing up, but also showing up in a way that is higher quality rather than just, posting every day for the sake of it. So, if content is limited, or if creating content is a tougher investment for some, it's a lot better to post 1 or 2 times a week of really high quality content than posting, every single day, or posting 4 to 5 times a day with lower quality content, just for the sake of showing up. So it's kind of a less is more situation. In terms of how to collect it, if there's any social media managers or marketers on here, we're always kind of keeping our eyes peeled for marketing and messages to be sent out to. But for a lot of folks, it's not first nature to kind of, see something and be like, wait, this would look really great online, or having their camera ready or something like that. So for those who are in charge of social media, but aren't necessarily wearing the hat of thinking about it 24/7, it's important to kind of, just have in the background of your mind that, content is kind of all around you, especially when we're in hospitality and entertainment, whether it's, user generated stuff, like, for example, someone visits Burlington, posts about it, tags a hotel, tags a restaurant. That's free content right there. And it's great. It's shareable. It's relatable. But then also just seeing what's around us in our community and, in our stores and our restaurants and our hotels, can be important too. So just, I think, always collecting it, always grabbing it, putting it in a big online folder, and then just having a bucket to choose from when it comes to actually executing, is great. So platforms, I think this is, again, an example of where a lot of us feel the pressure to kind of be on every single platform, or a question that comes up often is, do I need to be on this platform, or do I need to stay on this platform? And this is another example of where less is more, because if, content creation and budget and effort and execution and all hands on deck was, the sky the limit, then great, go on every single platform and have a different strategy for all the platforms and, really take the time to manage it. But that's rarely the situation where, the sky's the limit with budget and a huge marketing team. And so kind of meeting your audience where they are is the most important. Thinking about the platforms that they spend the most time on, and not, rather than spreading yourself thin, maybe being on 2 or 3 where, Facebook, for example, like I said, kind of the modern day phone book. So focusing, just knowing that that's an important one to be on. But if you're more of a visual platform, knowing that, Instagram is going to be a lot better than Twitter, for example. If TikTok is something that, if video creation is something that you have a really hard time grabbing or investing in, then you're not really going to do very well or have the means to, upkeep consistency on TikTok. TikTok also we'll talk about more, but TikTok is tough when it comes to like specific places. So unless it's like, for example, a restaurant or a hotel where they're spread across, the entire country, chances are you're going to post a TikTok and, a handful of people from our actual community or within the vicinity are going to see it. So then you're kind of putting this effort out, knowing that, people not only in your maybe age range for your audience, but also within a certain vicinity are going to see it. So these are just like things to think about when it comes to where's my audience and where should I be posting. In terms of how much and how often, again, this is kind of what I was saying, where less is more on the last slide, where it doesn't need to be every day unless you have really high quality content that can be posted every day and a team to be, paying that close attention to it on a daily or, even hourly basis sometimes. The way the algorithm works these days is, it's a mystery to all of us, including marketers, but a lot of what we do know is that it's based on engagement, and the life cycle of a post is often like anywhere from like 36 to 48 hours. So maybe you can think about like when you're on your own, Instagram or Facebook, for example, sometimes you log on and you see something that somebody posted 5 minutes ago, but oftentimes you see something that somebody posted 3 days ago and you're kind of like, oh, that's only showing up on my feed now, where, a lot of other folks have already seen it. Some folks won't see it at all because your post only gets shown to a certain percentage of the audience. But then the second something else is posted, it kind of pushes the previous post down, and it doesn't really let that post live the whole life cycle. So if you're posting every single day, then, it's great if you need to get messages out or specials out, if you're a restaurant or something like that. But if you don't need to be posting every day, then it's important to kind of let one post kind of live through its life cycle before kind of getting pushed down for the next one. So that's another thing to think about in terms of like, how often do we need to be posting, and, how many posts need to go out each week or each month. Moving on to social media tactics. So these are just kind of, there's a million little things that go into social media beyond just kind of throwing up a post, things to think about. These 6 ones are kind of like the biggest ones that we think about. Hashtags is a big one. There's a lot of confusion out there of, how many do we use? Instagram, for example, like allows you to use 30. Using 30, so they allow you to use 30, but they have made time and time again things where they say, well, if you use all 30 and you're not super specific about it, our algorithm actually sees it as spam. So keeping it, there's really no magic number, but keeping it like 5 to 10 and super specific, whether that's location specific, industry specific, a little bit of both, specific to like what's actually in the picture or the event, is going to do you a lot better than kind of like using all the room that they give you and doing 30 and doing, some really broad ones. If we do like hashtag hotel, for example, there's going to be millions and millions of posts that are posted on there, and you're going to kind of sink to the bottom really quickly because within the second you've posted everyone else is going to be using that hashtag right on top of you. But if you think of something a little bit more specific, like New England hotel, or something like that, you know, it's still enough where there's a lot of posts on that hashtag. So it's not extremely rare and untouched, but it's also not, you know, so popular where you're just going to get drowned. On Facebook, hashtags don't really do much. You know, if you click on them, they will kind of bring you to the same thing that Instagram does, but it's not common that people do that. Twitter is kind of where hashtags started, but there's a limited character account on Twitter. So it kind of depends on what there's room for. In that situation, hashtagging like a word within the sentence is kind of like a little way of getting a hashtag in there while still keeping the text the same and within limits. And then LinkedIn is pretty much the same as Instagram. We're keeping it like in super specific to kind of what you're posting about, whether it's a job posting, you know, a new role, you know, that's a little bit more personal. So relevancy is important there. Time to post. There's not really a best time to post because the algorithm, like I said, is showing people different posts at all different times, kind of within a few days range. You know, you want to get really good engagement on your post within the first couple hours of it being posted, because then Instagram and Facebook specifically will say, oh, a lot of people are engaging with this post in the first few couple hours. That must mean that it's gonna, you know, it's a high engaging post. Let's push it out to, you know, another percentage of it. So thinking about timing from that sense is important, you know, posting it maybe kind of like during lunch hour, commuting times, or kind of after dinner, rather than maybe 3 a.m. But at the end of the day, like, we're kind of all on our phones all the time. So there's no guessing of kind of, you know, it should be before breakfast when people start their day, or during commuting hour, or during their lunch break, because people are on their phones a lot more than just on their breaks. Engagement is one of the busiest and most hectic and time-consuming parts of social media, but it's also one of the most important ones, especially in the hospitality industry. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of, you know, inquiries. There's a lot of people tagging because they're visiting these places, they're purchasing from the places, they're eating, they're staying, whatever they may be doing. So it's common for tags, you know, to come in. So really staying on top of the engagement is honestly going to bring you even further than just like posting every day. If you're posting every day, but not staying on top of the engagement, which may seem like a no-brainer, but also kind of like Jeff's point of kind of just letting it, you know, scheduling it, letting it go, not staying on top of it. That's, you know, engagement really comes into play there. Reaching out to community, kind of like-minded businesses that you partner with. You know, for example, if you're a hotel and you're recommending a lot of restaurants, really using that engagement tactic to create a further relationship on, you know, even if you have a relationship behind the scenes, but creating a relationship on social media is important as well. Linking is really important because we're driving traffic, but just thinking about where links can go. For example, they're not clickable on Instagram, but they are in the bio. So using something like Linktree or Link in Bio is important. Those are two softwares that help you kind of just add more links on a platform that only technically allows you to have one. I see Heather's raising her hand. I want to stop and
just curious. I heard
Yeah.
that if you have links in your social media that take you out of that page and not a link within Facebook and Instagram, it actually hurts. And just curious if that's true. We tend to use Linktree as our profile link in Instagram. And we're also using it as the primary link in our Facebook and most other places. If people don't feel that their only option is to go to our website, that it's really more about focused on getting them to the information they want, regardless of where we might store that.
Yeah.
So just curious your thoughts on how.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we love Linktree. We use Linktree for, you know, unless we have a client who has one website and that's the only place to send them, and it doesn't really make sense to send them other places. We don't, but I would say like 99% of the time we're using Linktree, even if it is one website, breaking it down of kind of like, general website, visit our blog, book your room here, kind of just breaking it down a bit. Instagram and Facebook specifically, but then again, all social media, like they want you to stay on the platforms as much as they possibly can, because they want you to stay on their platforms. They want everything to kind of live in the platforms, but that's also not necessarily a reality. They have added tools to kind of stay in the platforms, for example, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, like you can now order takeout from an Instagram story sticker. So that's one way, or, kind of like the shopping on Instagram, where if you upload your catalog to the back end of Facebook, you can shop directly on Amazon, which is kind of their way, or on Instagram, which is kind of their way of, the staying on Amazon and the one-click shop without leaving the app sort of thing. So it is possible to do that. But then again, like a lot of people do just want to leave the app because they need to look into it a little bit more, or they want to see the whole website, or, they just want to see it on a different platform. So it doesn't necessarily hurt it. Like it's not, if you were to run reports, for example, it's not going to be detrimental to kind of what you're posting or how you're showing up in the algorithm. Like no one's really like knocking points off of you for doing that necessarily. It's more that they're just constantly adding tools to try to keep you inside. But Linktree is one of our favorite tools. So I think that's great that you're using that. Negative comments, social media, the internet in general is the main place for negative comments. And so kind of I think it's really important for marketing teams to kind of have just an internal plan of how do we deal with that. There's kind of different ways of addressing it. There's, ignoring it altogether. There's hiding the comments so that the person who commented, when you hide a comment, the person who comments can still see it. So they don't feel like they were, muted or taken off, but then others can't see it. So it doesn't feel like, it's kind of a balance between, I'm not going to engage with this person and I don't want other people to see it, but I'm also not going to delete this comment and make it so that the person feels like, well, you just ignored me and deleted my comment. Sometimes and oftentimes responding to it, even if it's a tricky thing, similar to like a Google review, is the way to go. And if it gets to the point where there's more than one or two exchanges back and forth, that's when it should kind of be taken off of social media and say, let's have a phone call, or, if there's further concerns, here's a great way to reach us. But sometimes addressing them, kind of opens the floor for conversation, which at the end of the day is what social media is about. But it also lets, the customers or potential customers be heard. And then it also kind of shows other folks who might be watching or see it kind of like the answer to this person's negative comment or concern, especially, if you guys, as the client are kind of responding in a positive manner. But having a plan of kind of how do we address it? When do we hide? When do we delete? What's appropriate, what's not appropriate to respond to is important, because sometimes these things come up out of nowhere and then they need to be taken care of like pretty quickly. Heather.
There's something we're working on right now is we did a satisfaction survey last semester, and we do one every semester. And then we work with our team to figure out what can we do, what can't we do, and share it back with students as like a "you asked, we heard you" campaign. And so just thoughts on when there is negative commentary. One, the definition negative can be kind of broad, but I guess if it's critical feedback, like they're criticizing, is there ever a right way to kind of take that and share it back? Maybe even like a screenshot of like, thanks, at Tom Carton for like sharing this comment. You asked, we heard you. Here's what we've done as a change. Like, do you ever recommend that? I know it could potentially start a riot. Sometimes people say, just message back, thank you for your comment. We'll send you a DM so that you don't get into a conversation in the comment thread, but at least everyone else knows, like, you saw it, you responded, you're going to take action. And if that other person wants to then take a screenshot of your DM chat and like share it out there, that's on them. But I don't know, there's so many different things that we can go about it.
Yeah. And that's what, that's why just like having a plan, sometimes people will bring in, sometimes we'll consult with folks just on coming up with an internal plan about that, because like you said, there's so many different ways that it can go. I think kind of a hybrid of what you were talking about is, sometimes people think like the, thanks, shoot us a DM is kind of a write-off for like, hey, we don't want to deal with you in public. Let's take it behind closed doors. But at the same time, like sometimes it's more appropriate to have that conversation, personally between the customer and you guys. So I think it really, one of those things is kind of just like super situational. Other times it is nice to be transparent and just kind of say, without being too defensive, making them feel heard, but then also kind of correcting them, but also kind of keeping in mind, like the customer is always right, but also, so it's like, it's just such a back and forth balance of how to make someone feel heard, how to feel, make them feel like, you are right, validating them, but then at the same time, kind of echoing the transparency and the, reasons for whatever you guys are putting out and what, they may think is controversial. But then, yeah, sometimes it's one of those things where it's just the comment is so far in left field and it needs to be a conversation, but it needs to happen offline. So just responding with a kind of, we hear you, we noted you, we'd love to talk to you about this, shoot us a DM, with further conversation. We've had restaurants where people have been unhappy with like they get takeout and they're not happy and they leave, like they take a picture of it and they're like, this was presented much differently than like the picture online or something like that. And we just say, we'd love to make it up with you, for you. If you could, some clients want us just automatically send a gift card anytime that happens. Other clients kind of want to know what happens, or, what they weren't happy with. So sometimes it's as easy as, we'd love to make it up with you, for you, send us, your contact information. And then, just something like that, like you said, the thank you, and then knowing that it's taken care of offline. So I think a hybrid of what you're saying, but also just keeping in mind that it's extremely situational and there's not really a one size fits all plan for it, if that makes sense. So stories versus static. This is just one thing we get a lot of questions, especially since stories have become more popular, of like, when do you post something on the feed, versus when do you post something as a story? I think, like if it's a quick announcement, posting it on a story is totally fine. If it's really high quality, that's great stuff for the feed, especially because content can be really hard to come by. If it's meant to just kind of be like bite size, like a quick little announcement, like, hey, our menu is changing today, or we're going to be late, or, late opening or something like that. That's great for stories, versus static is higher quality content. But they can both kind of echo each other. So, just because you posted on the story, on this, static on the feed, sharing it to the story or posting kind of a smaller bite-sized version of it, on the story is also appropriate and a great way to kind of double down, because different people see the stories than they do the feed. So kind of cross-pollinating that is also important. Nope, not letting me move. There you go. So this is a little bit touching on kind of some specific things that are, evolving, but also specific to the hospitality industry. Is anyone in here using Instagram guides? I'd just be curious. I know Hello Burlington is. I've seen a few folks that are using it, but these are a really great way to kind of like, it reminds me of when we used to stop at like the rest stops, and there's like, the big thing of brochures, or how a lot of hotels just kind of have, some do, I've noticed that a lot don't, have like the big stack of brochures of kind of like to-dos in the area, where to eat, what to do, what, who to see, what to visit. And in a way that's, people still love having those tangible kind of brochures. And another way it's kind of dated. And people are it's just one more example of things that people are moving online. Even if it's not being moved online, the Instagram guides are a really great way to just kind of like further flesh out, Instagram. A few years ago, or even just like last year, the past 2 years, Instagram was kind of just, it was what it was. It was kind of stories and the main feed. But it's evolving a lot for tools for small businesses. And Instagram Guides is one of them. And I see it most commonly used in the industry or in the hospitality industry, because it's just a great way to kind of create different you can have one guide, you can have 10 guides, you can kind of categorize them, but essentially it's kind of creating like, a little breakdown of a brochure of what to do in Burlington, or, hey, you're eating around here, or how to enjoy and pair different things on our menu, or you can get really creative with what you do and how you present on them.
Can I jump in for 1 second just to
Yeah,
toot
please.
our own horn? Sophia,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
So if anyone isn't familiar with Instagram Guides, if you go to Hello Burlington's profile and just above the gallery, you'll see the icon of, looks like a newspaper that's being opened. You'll know what I mean when you get there and look at it. Those are our Instagram Guides. And essentially we are updating those to try to keep some of the information more current. So some of that might be a little outdated. But if you take a look the way we've used them, it's almost like they invented this for destination marketing. Basically, ours are guides to neighborhoods within Burlington as well as surrounding towns around the downtown area. But it's a good example of how you might be able to leverage these for your business as well.
Yeah, and I'm happy to send this deck out to anybody. And when I send this deck out, I'll send kind of like just different articles on how to create a guide. There's some accounts out there, anything from like retail to clothing stores to restaurants to hotels that are doing a really great job at using them. Some clothing stores, for example, will use them to kind of be like almost like kind of like a lookbook, like, here are the summer looks and a guide to that. Like I said, restaurants will use them to kind of, you're coming here for a cocktail, here's some great things that kind of, pair with that. Or more municipals or, towns, cities will use it for kind of in the way that Jeff was just mentioning. If you go to the Instagram, just hotel, it's just like the Instagram account is just called Hotel, and it's just hotels all around the world. They just have guides for just like all different cities that you're visiting. So that's also a great example to look at. Stickers on Instagram and Facebook stories, this kind of came up earlier, but this was actually a feature that came out during COVID when takeout was, really kind of one of the only options to eat out or, get food from out of the house. And so if you're a restaurant, you can add to your story a sticker where it just links directly to your menu, and you can get takeout directly on there. When it was added, we thought it was a great idea, and we weren't sure if it was going to stay popular or even be popular, because kind of like Heather was saying, it's one of those things where it's like they just want you to stay on the app, but are people going to be like, no, it's so much easier to just call in a pizza or order from the website, because Toast Tab, for example, is a lot easier to navigate than Instagram when it comes to certain things. But they did a pretty good job at doing it, and we're reading a lot of reports in like industry news that it is still really popular. And again, it's just kind of one of those ways of keeping things on the app when it's appropriate or ready to do so. So that, or just using the link button to just link directly to, your takeout page or your book a room page or, your Shopify site or whatever it may be. That's, a great use for the stickers. I think one of the most important, this isn't anything new, but it's becoming more and more vital as just like real estate on the internet is just becoming more competitive and taken up, is reviews. So Facebook is really kind of one of the only places that you can actually leave like the traditional review, Google type review that we think of. But one of the reasons it's so important to get people to try to leave your review on Facebook as well as Google is because Google will actually populate Facebook reviews onto your Google page. And that helps your business show up on Google that much more. The algorithm for showing up locally when someone might search, anything kind of destination related in a city or a town has to do with kind of where you are on the map, your the amount of reviews you get, your website speed, things like that. So if you can get as many reviews, not only to help you with just like reputation and PR, but to help with just kind of showing up, then that's really important as well. So Facebook that's one reason why people are kind of like, well, you know, I'm not getting a lot of engagement on Facebook. Facebook, we all kind of have our own love-hate, mostly hate relationship with Facebook these days. But one thing that Facebook does have that others don't is, you know, kind of a lot of those features like reviews that help us show up, you know, outside of Facebook, which is important, especially for the hospitality industry. So a couple more changes to keep in mind is kind of the pay to play. You know, reach is a really weird thing. Sometimes you're going to have things like Jeff mentioned where you're like, whoa, this skyrocketed and we can't really make sense of it. But a lot of times you're going to just have like, you know, this discouragement of, we thought this was a really great post. Why isn't it doing well? And really what it comes down to is, you know, these platforms decided, hey, we are a business too, and we can't be free forever, but we're not going to charge you to be on there. So in order to do the best on here or compete with others, you're going to kind of have to pay, whether that means like doing ads or boosting a post. So that's kind of, you know, when the algorithm changed for the reach and stuff. I think it's important to kind of have a strategy of when do you pay for stuff? What type of content is it that you're putting out for ads, or if you're not doing ads, boosting it. But also keeping in mind that having organic social is super important, because that's just kind of ongoing brand management and reputation, and, you know, almost a portfolio of your business for people to look at, even if you're not, you know, paying to have it have a higher reach. So just managing those expectations around that. Scams is a big one, especially in the hospitality industry, you know, especially with like retail and stuff. The hospitality industry is a great industry for giving stuff away, whether it's, you know, a t-shirt or a bag from a local store, or a night at a hotel, or a gift card to a restaurant. And I think a lot of us have experienced the scams of kind of like, oh, all of a sudden there's a duplicate account. What do we do about it? And there's the panic of, you know, getting everyone to not engage with the account, putting out the PR. It very quickly becomes kind of like a PR and reputation management tactic. Then that takes away from the whole point of why we were doing a giveaway in the first place. Giveaways being kind of where they happen the most. So I think, you know, the most important part for doing, if you're going to do a giveaway and you kind of want to avoid scams, knowing that doing a giveaway and keeping your account safe, you know, it's just always a risk that's going to be taken. That's just kind of like the downside of it, is knowing that that's always going to be a risk. But one thing to kind of like mitigate that risk, or to kind of like stay ahead of if it happens, is in the caption of when you're doing a giveaway, for example, kind of like putting out a disclaimer. So doing the kind of like the normal caption of what you're giving away, who you're partnering with, but then having another caption that really just very clearly outlines the details, like saying something like, you know, we are going to pick a winner on this day. If you are the winner, you are going to hear from this tag. You know, we're going to contact you via this. We will never ask you for personal info. You know, so that really outlines the kind of keeps you guys safe from anyone who kind of says like, well, so-and-so reached out and they asked for my credit card. And, you know, you kind of have that disclaimer in there saying, well, you were going to be contacted by, you know, this username through a DM on this day. And we would never ask for personal info over, you know, over DMs, or if anything, we would just ask for, you know, your name or a place to pick it up or something like that. So it's kind of, again, a balance of knowing that scams are out there everywhere. Unfortunately, they've started to hit places like Instagram where they didn't before. And just kind of keeping your account safe, you know, not only from hackers, like with two-factor authentication is important, but if they're not hacking your account, but they're duplicating your account, you know, making it clear that that this is how you're gonna how you're going to run your contests and who you're going to be heard from, and kind of staying ahead of it that way. Oftentimes, and one thing to think about is the blue check mark is helpful, if you're able to get it. And a lot of hospitality companies within the industry do qualify for the blue check mark. The blue check mark does legitimize you, which, is helpful for a lot of folks, but it also does make it a little bit more easier to become a target. So people kind of go back and forth with whether they want that blue check mark, because people will see the blue check mark and they'll be like, this is a really important account. There's probably a lot of people engaging on here. That's a good one to go after. That's what scammers will think. But then it also kind of helps you with legitimizing it. So just kind of things to think about internally. TikTok, what's next? There's a lot of speculation. This has come up like 3 or 4 times with TikTok of whether it's going to be banned, who's going to be banned by it. They were thinking recently of kind of banning it in the US altogether. And then they thought kind of like their hybrid of that would be just to ban it from certain folks, for example, government agencies. It's a bit unclear as to like who falls in that government agencies, if it's just specific people, if it's, different industries that kind of are government funded. And right now it's a lot of speculation and talk. So I think this is an example of just focusing on the, even though they're always changing and they're always evolving, some platforms, for example, Instagram and Facebook, are kind of always going to be there, even if they're changing. They're less of kind of like a sensation or a fad that kind of like comes and goes, or the popularity of it comes and goes. So, if you are doing TikTok, but you're hesitant of kind of what's to come, which a lot of us are still slowly learning about, that would be, a good idea for that would be really focusing your energy on Reels. Especially if you already have an audience on Instagram, putting the same type of thing that you would on TikTok on Reels, which a lot of folks are doing anyways, then you're kind of putting your effort into something that might be changing, but isn't going to be going away anytime soon. So that would be my recommendation there until the rest of the world knows more. So the biggest thing in terms of starting, now that I've thrown a ton of information at you, whether you're starting from scratch or you're kind of redefining things or just kind of taking tidbits away from it, these are kind of just like the big, the 3 big pillars that I would recommend is, researching and identifying, who your audience is and where they spend the most time on, so that you can really kind of think about what platforms to invest, and allocate time and money towards. Having a content calendar is super important. We do batch content, by month. So like, right now we're working on content for February for everybody, so that the month doesn't come up and it's a situation of, shoot, I got to post. What do I even post? And then it kind of feels like you're pointing in the dark, or it's not as, intentional when you're kind of posting last minute just for the sake of posting. And it's also just a matter of time management. So coming up with a content calendar can be really helpful. And then making a daily, weekly and even monthly routine. So, similar to sitting down and checking your email in the morning, knowing that if you are in the position where you're managing the social media, making that part of the routine. So, for example, part of what I do every morning is not only do I check my email, but then we're checking on and monitoring all accounts. And that's kind of something that's happening all throughout the day, similar to how a lot of us kind of live in our inboxes. So coming up with those routines can help make it look a little bit more manageable, especially if it's managed, in-house by someone who's wearing multiple hats, which is often understandably the case. So that is all I have, but I would love questions and answers, or just open it up to a discussion.
I would say we're a small enough group. If you have a question, just go ahead and toss it out. I still don't know how to raise my hand.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah, hi, Josh. Yeah.
In the very beginning, you brushed through some real interesting stuff about Facebook, 1%. I didn't understand a lot of it. I don't know if I'm the only one, or if I'm the only one, okay, then maybe a sidebar conversation. But later on, Chloe started talking about the changes to Facebook, and the two seem to go together, what you started with and then what
Yeah.
Chloe was. And I've been noticing on my own Facebook stuff, the changes that have been happening, and the demographics are changing dramatically. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
can you briefly tell us what algorithm, are you saying that things were bad on Facebook or good? You said 1%. I don't know whether that was a good number or a bad number.
So yeah, Josh, just to back up what I was sort of saying was using one of our recent posts as an example that had done very well within our community of followers, but was unable to reach outside that group of followers to people that don't follow us yet. And, you know, we look to Instagram and Facebook in particular right now as a relatively new initiative, as a growth opportunity. We do want to use it to connect with the audience that we have, but also really look to expand our footprint and grow that following on a week by week, month by month basis. And what I was saying is that our ability to reach outside our current following has changed dramatically with the algorithms. And Sophia, I'm going to stop right there because I'm sort of outside my pay grade with this one. And I think you might have a little more information that would be relevant to answering Josh, if you don't mind jumping in.
Yeah. Josh, does that make sense so far?
Yeah, so far, I think I'm on the right page. The way I'm interpreting it is that when I see a post for Hello Burlington and it comes across on my Facebook page,
Mhm.
I can share that. What happens to it after I share it?
Yeah.
That will go to people that within my community, it can't get out of that community. Is that
Yeah.
what
So yeah, that's a good question. So and that's kind of where the pay to play part that I was coming into, or that I was mentioning comes into. So, you know, right now, like it's pretty contained where they're like, okay, we're just going to show it to your audience. It's great if people share it because then, you know, you share it and Kyle shares it and, you know, a bunch of us share it. And then it's kind of going out to like different webs of, you know, different people who all kind of, even if there's some overlap, there's lots of different communities. That's how, you know, fundraisers, for example, get so much traction when, you know, someone is just like, or things that go viral. It's just a matter of like everyone kind of having this common interest or support for something where they're all sharing it and there's no money behind it or anything like that. It's just that everyone feels compelled to share this one thing. So that's one way to kind of get it outside and how it reaches outside, which sometimes doesn't happen. And then the other way of kind of like getting it outside of the audience is again, where I was kind of saying that's when Facebook and Instagram decided, you know, hey, if you really want to reach people, that's not just kind of within your own bubble, you're going to have to pay for that. So that's when, you know, boosting a post and choosing an audience. And that's where you say, I'm going to put $20 behind this post and I want it to show to everyone, you know, in New England, between this age range with these certain demographics. That's when it kind of, you know, gets outside of your audience.
Okay. All right, that's
Yeah.
that kind of, I mean, I see my own Facebook and I'm seeing how, and it's just within the last few months, I'm seeing posts that are, I'm seeing posts repeating themselves, the exact same post.
Right.
I'll see a post, I'll like it sometimes,
Yeah.
and then I'll scroll down and I see the same post again. Of course, I didn't like that one. I like the first, but it's the exact same post. I'll scroll down further and I see another post, the exact same thing. And what would concern me about that, because a couple of times I've been tempted to start hiding them, but then I look at it and go, wait a minute, this is coming from somebody that I know. So if I start hiding, does that mean I'm hiding an ad or I'm hiding a post or I'm hiding the individual? I don't know. I'm going to go home.
It can be hard to know too, you know, if it's a person posting it versus a company, and personal pages versus like business pages have different algorithms themselves too. So that's something to be mindful of also, you know, if this is something you're seeing from your neighbor versus this is something you're seeing from Hello Burlington, the algorithms and the way you're seeing it is going to be different. But oftentimes when you see it more than once, it's because the algorithm is pushing it out more than once because a lot of people are engaging on it. So it's getting kind of pushed back up. There's a lot of different reasons for it.
I don't want to take all that time. I got other questions. Thank you.
I'm here for it. Yeah, of course.
You got it, Josh. Anybody else?
I got one. Well, if nobody else is going to ask, I got one other question then. Why
Go
don't
for
I
it.
hear any conversations about doing things with YouTube when, whenever I see like trivia questions or whatnot, YouTube is supposed to be the #2 used search engine for all these different things. And personally, I rarely go on it, but I'm different demographic. So can you speak to that? I mean, is it any good? Is there a reason why and I rarely hear any marketers talking about doing anything with YouTube.
Yeah,
Why?
YouTube is, well, first of all, it comes down to content. You know, if you don't have video, then there's not much of a place for you on YouTube, or some people, you know, aren't investing in video. Like, I think video is really important these days across all networks. But YouTube is all video based. It's also great, you know, for just like an archive to have. Like, YouTube is never going away. And, you know, they're always adapting. YouTube has started kind of doing their own version of like Reels and TikToks with what they call YouTube Shorts. So we used to think of YouTube as kind of, you know, the horizontal, longer form videos, whereas the whole way of the internet is moving into much shorter form videos because our patience is very thin and we just want to keep moving through the internet. But YouTube is kind of just one of those safe places of it's always going to be there. People are always going to use YouTube for one thing or another. Sometimes it's for entertainment, sometimes it's for education. So if you can be on YouTube, or if you can at least use YouTube to, you know, have it as a library archive for your video content, then that's great. But what it comes down to is having that content or investing in that content, which is kind of why a lot of folks aren't on there, because they just simply don't have, you know, the video for it, or it doesn't necessarily make sense.
All that makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna be quiet.
Yep. Anyone else have a question?
Good question.
And I have a quick one, Sophia, but I want to make sure nobody else is waiting. So I'll just jump in. In terms of what Josh just asked about in the first question, where we've seen it's harder and harder to get organic growth on some of these platforms, and it's becoming more and more of a pay to play scenario where if you want to get outside your following, you're going to have to boost posts and sponsor content. How much of that is a result of two things? TikTok's competitive pressure on Instagram, where they're pushing you to, well, actually, let me let me keep it to one, because I think this one is more important. How much of it is actually a factor of Facebook's parent company's Meta's financial status at this point in time, where their stock tanked several months ago because they'd been putting so much time and money into developing the metaverse and maybe forgot about their bread and butter? Are they under pressure to simply monetize the platform for shareholders' concerns? And that's why we're seeing this change where organic traffic just is not coming the way that it used to?
That's a big part of it. But we were seeing a lot of that, you know, a few years ago as well, which, you know, needless to say, that's probably behind the scenes when a lot of like, you know, talk of the metaverse kind of started, even though it's like fairly new to us. But it definitely became a pay to play, you know, more so I would say like 4 years ago, you know, 5 years ago, it was still important. I remember, you know, 6 or 7 years ago, even like some of those like really popular companies like Bombas Socks is a great one that we think of, or we all kind of know. Like they're the reason they're as big today because of Facebook ads. They were kind of one of the first pioneers of it. So it definitely started a long time ago when they kind of were like, we just want your money. But then as competition changed, as the metaverse changed, it became even more so of a, you know, of a topic.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm not going to cut anyone off. Does anyone else have a question before we wrap up? Toss it out there while we've got Sophia at our disposal.
Curious with creating your own stickers. So like in Instagram stories, there's a lot of things you can use, but there's also some apps out there where you can create your own. So if you wanted, like say your mascot or your logo is a lion, you wanted a claw or something like funny or fun. Just curious if you've done much work with that, if you know that adding in a custom one hurts or helps?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't hurt. There's a lot of different programs out there that do it that Instagram actually endorses. I think it's a great way of branding, not only branding, adding it to your own story, but, having others add it to the story. If you're kind of encouraging other users and followers to say, post this and add our stickers or check out our new stickers, that also helps kind of get your account out there. So it's definitely not hurtful. If anything, it's just more brand exposure. And there's a lot of great little softwares out there that help you do it.
Hey, everyone. I'm super sorry about that. I don't know what happened. My screen froze. I jumped in on Tom's. But Sophia, thanks so much for joining us. I hope I'm not interrupting a question if someone had one for you.
I don't think so. Were there any other ones?
Okay, excellent. Folks, I just wanted to let you know, thanks for joining us. We can share Sophia's deck with you later in the week once we get it from her, and can also share a link to this recording for you or anyone else on your teams that might want to see it later on in time. Okay. So thanks everybody for joining us. Nice to see everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.